WWOZ is proud to celebrate 300 years of New Orleans history with this Tricentennial music moment.
In 1960, Harold Battiste Jr. was 29 years old and an accomplished saxophonist, composer, arranger, and producer. He was one of many ambitious and gifted New Orleans musicians of his generation. He left the Crescent City to pursue a more lucrative career working as a talent scout and arranger for record companies in Los Angeles. In 1960, he took a train trip back to visit relatives. On that train trip, he sat dreaming of starting a record company back home, a company for and by New Orleans musicians, making money for the musicians themselves instead of out-of-town label owners in suits. By a strange coincidence, when the train stopped in El Paso, Texas, Harold's friend Earl King got on board. Harold described his revolutionary label idea to him for the first time ever, and Earl encouraged him to move forward. And so began All for One Records. It was founded in 1961 after Battiste had relocated back to New Orleans. The new label, called AFO for short, was a collective completely owned by local African-American musicians, including Harold, Chuck Beatty, Alvin Red Tyler, Melvin Lasty, and more. They set up shop at the corner of Claiborne and Orleans Avenues. AFO made an immediate contribution to jazz history by recording some of the first non-traditional New Orleans jazz with acts like the American Jazz Quintet, which featured Harold, with Ellis Marsalis, Alvin Battiste, Ed Blackwell, and Chuck Beatty. The compositions released on AFO albums in that era are legendary and marked a high point for contemporary jazz in New Orleans. AFO enjoyed immediate commercial success with their second single release ever, I Know You Don't Love Me No More by Barbara George. It went to #1 on the R&B charts and #3 on the pop charts. During a golden age for New Orleans music, AFO Records seemed like a crowning achievement. But then Barbara George defected to another label, and by 1963, Harold Battiste had moved AFO to Los Angeles, hoping the new locale would reinvigorate the business. By the following year, the label was on hiatus, and Battiste was moving into the next phase of his career. He became Sonny and Cher's musical director, and he was also busy in the studio as a producer, turning a young man named Mac Rebenack into a character called Dr. John. AFO faded for a while, but after Harold returned to New Orleans for good in the late 1980s, it came back for a second act, recording acts like Jermaine Basil and Victor Goines, as well as a new generation of young jazz players. All for One Records had its ups and downs, but for Harold Battiste and hundreds of other New Orleans musicians, it showed that it could be done and it could work. And it set an example for more to follow. For WWOZ, I'm John Goodman.
This Tricentennial music moment was made possible by the New Orleans Tourism Marketing Corporation, the Hellis Foundation, the Ruth U. Fertel Foundation, Hancock Whitney Bank, and Hilton. Special thanks to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation. To learn more, go to www.oz.org. And keep listening to WWOZ for more Tricentennial music moments.
Harold kept close ties to his home back in New Orleans, though. In 1960, he took a train trip back to visit relatives. On that train trip, he sat dreaming of starting a record company back